Okay, so welcome everyone to the second round of webinar organized by the European Federation of Animal Science together with the CoCo project. I'm Virginia Boiani, I'm a researcher at the University of Turin, and I'm going to be the chair of today's session. Before starting, just to let you know, this recording will be available in the same platform where you register in almost 2 weeks, to say so, and it will be available to be looked at for a lot, I guess. So just to let you know, I will share my presentation in a bit. Okay. I will wait for a few moment. Just let me know if you can. Okay, thank you so much. So again, I will introduce to you task 3.2 of CoCo project, and soon you will understand why this is linked with today's topic of livestock preventive measure across Europe. So before we dig deeper in the presentation, just a few words about CoCo. This is an Horizon project funded by the EU, and I hope you saw already the first round of these seminars where John Linnell, our project leader, talked about very deeply about this project. So the real project aim stands already in its name. CoCo stands for Co-Creating Coexistence. This is a multi-actor project where different professionals, researchers, stakeholders work together to achieve coexistence between the pastoralism and the recovery of wildlife, and specifically large carnivore. You can see this is the structure of the project, as it involves a multiple aspect of this friction between these two words. It doesn't only rely on the economical side, the research side, or the social side. It is a combination of all these aspects together. And task 3.2, it's here, where you see it's circled. And specifically, it is within the working package 3, which focuses on the effectivity of livestock protection strategies. And you heard about it already if you saw, again, the last series of webinars, where Daniel Collado, working for CETA, is the leader of this working package and talked to you about the first of this task, which is task 3.1, where we interviewed 1,000 farmers around all the 12 countries that are involved within this project, and obtain information about husbandry practice. What we did with task 3.2 is to evaluate, only focusing on the preventive measure, the quality of the implementation in the field of this specific measure. So what does this add to the other task? Well, of course, self-reported data are the pillar for this kind of science, and are used in every kind of questionnaire or work or study. But here, if we want to look at effectiveness of the preventive measure, we needed to know about the technical quality of this implementation in local context. So if we look at effectiveness, we want to know not only that specific measure is present, but how it is installed, how it is maintained, adapted at each context. So to be really open and clear, we cannot maybe link this data, this information to a depredation event, because this is just a snapshot in time. We are looking at one specific moment and cannot be relied to anything in the past. But we can surely use, by implementing this cross-country protocol, we can have this comparison between all the countries involved, using harmonized and standardized data collection, and also provide some maybe information for next policy discussion by comparing our data, flagging out criticalities encountered, and help to ameliorate the discussion at each level. So what we did in task 3.2, we randomly subsample, not that randomly in reality, but we subsampled from the 1,000 farmers interviewed in task 3.1. So we went to these farmers in their pasture and observed three specific categories of preventive measure. One is the fences, which are electric or not, livestock guarding dogs, their behavior, and some shepherding strategies. Here are reported really briefly, and some of the things that we evaluated of each specific category. What you will learn more about all of these from the upcoming talks from the next panelists, which are going to focus on each specific of these three categories. But the the correct levels of voltage, the correct cleanness, let's say, of from the vegetation, from the fences, and a correct number of dogs, etc., are as important as having them. So we didn't straightforwardly went to the field to collect data. This work involved a huge work before in coordinating and in standardizing our way to do things. So you already know probably about the selection of the study areas. That was the same one for 3.1, for task 3.1, the interview of the farmers. Then we needed to develop together a protocol and a way to collect this information that was the same for everyone, and also to buy and use the same tools to provide this measurement. And then after having all these tools, we met and trained all together to standardize our way to do things and understand clearly what we need to measure during our field observations. So these are pictures from our meeting in Rome. And finally, field begin. Just a super quick look at our sampling strategy. We tried to, in our, let's not say random subsample, in our subsample, we tried to be representative of what we have in each country, so represent all the sexes involved, and also try to represent all the livestock that it's usually depredated by carnivores in each specific country. Usually it's sheep, goats all together, and cattle. And the third point, we try to represent pasture that have been depredated in the past, but also other pastures that didn't experience depredation. So, as I said, it was finally time for data collection. So field season began at around May in 2020-25, and it went on for more than 6 months and ended in December 2025. You can see in the right of the slide, there's just a screen of our field observation data sheet. The data collection involved all 12 countries of the project, and each country is involved within from 1 to 3 study areas. This is a super simple spatial representation. The first results that I can show you are this representation of the field sites that being observed within this task. We reached the number of 321 pastures, and you can see same color means same country, but different shape for each country. It's different study areas. So we have from 1 to 3 study areas, I told you before. And by, again, looking quickly at the results, these are really preliminary descriptive data. So just to have a look of what we have at first, we see that farmer with sheep and goat are the main represented in our sample, followed by cattle farmers, and then mixed livestock, only a tiny percentage at reindeer, and only half of the pastures observed experienced predation within the very same pasture. And the main responsible of this predation was the wolf, and then bear, and to a lesser extent lynx. Looking at two different plots for the results. On the left, we have the use of combination of livestock guarding dogs, stable and electric fences. What we see is that we have a huge, a great percentage of use within our observation of livestock guarding dogs for Romania, Greece, and to a lesser extent Spain and Italy, while usually electric fences are well used almost everywhere, especially you see some case specific as Norway, which uses a lot electric fences, but has no livestock guarding dogs, and on contrary, Slovakia doesn't, and similarly, Slovakia has little extent in use, and Sweden of livestock guarding dogs compared to electric fences. If we then look at the plot on the right, we see here we have the integrated use of different strategies for shepherding, for reducing the predation, usually related to that. You see, again, as before, a huge variation within each country. And some countries like Greece, Latvia, and Sweden or France use a great percentage of combination of all these three strategies altogether: shepherd daily control, newborn management, and night recovery, while others, as Slovenia or Germany, doesn't really use this combination altogether. So again, there's a lot to come next. This was just a super quick look at our data. They are going to be explored really deeper in the next coming days. And our goal is to integrate these data with the farmer survey that you heard already about, and best practice evaluation that Filippo is going to talk to you about soon. And keep your eyes open if you're interested, because we have the full report due by the end of October, and hopefully a scientific paper about these analyses that is going to come. So yes, I guess I'm done with this introduction, and I can leave the floor to the other panelists. I'll stop sharing. Okay. I don't know if we have already question. Let me look. Okay. The way we can interact it's by having you writing question in the chat, and then we can have a look at that and answer. I'll let you do some question maybe while Filippo can talk, and we can answer this question every two panelists. I don't know if it makes sense.
Okay. There's already a couple of questions, Virginia. Yeah. Maybe just quickly, and then I can start with my presentation.
Okay. Yes. Yes, I can. So Dara Broadley asked, it would be interesting to separate the data about protection measures used between farmers that have predation and ones that have not. Yes, sure. That was the goal of having both representation in the data sample. So sure, these are going to be things that we will explore. Also, different livestock species, a lot of differentiation we need to do and check. And to answer John, he asked about what do you mean by night recovery? Night recovery usually is to enclose the livestock in whether it is stable or whether it is a fencing. So that, and I mean to say, people have predation have more protective measure. Yeah, sure. Dara explained a little bit further what she was meaning, and sure, this is really interesting and was one of our main questions. So it will be something we will explore for sure. Okay, I guess.
Yeah, can go on.
Let you talk.
And let me share the screen. 1 second. Okay. Do you see the slides? All right. Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Virginia, for introducing for your talk and for introducing the remaining talks. So, and good afternoon again, everyone, and thanks for joining this second webinar. So my name is Filippo Marino. I guess that I'm a postdoc researcher, and within CoCo, I'm working with the Institute of Applied Ecology, which is based in Rome and is one, along with the University of Turin, one of the Italian partners in CoCo. And today I'm going to talk about the state of the art of livestock protection in Europe, from technical measures to coexistence. And this work, the work that I'm conducting, is part of CoCo Task 2.4. So it's another task compared to the one that Virginia has just presented. And here we are reviewing basically the interface between large carnivores and the agropastoral practices across Europe. And we are interested in examining all these different practices that are modulating these interactions. And these include, obviously, the preventive measures. So, but not only, because as part of CoCo, we are interested in creating coexistence. So specifically, the objectives are to determine whether and how different practices are designed, implemented, and evaluated, to assess the effectiveness of these practices across different types of pastoral systems. We've just seen with Virginia that there's quite a variety across Europe, and in particular across different stages. So not just about implementation, but also considering the design, the monitoring, and evaluation of these measures. And finally, also to distill a set of best practices at different levels in terms of both outcomes, so the final products, but also the processes that have led us to these products. So we're talking about design, participation, and monitoring. So getting into it, we are doing research, obviously, so we have some specific research questions. And briefly, just an overview about these questions. We're interested in answering what are the most used measures across Europe, what are the enablers of successful implementation, so what is leading us to a successful implementation, and how often are these measures co-designed with the final users, so with stakeholders, to what extent has monitoring been conducted in the past, and finally, what lesson can be learned from previous localized experiences. So as you can see, there's quite a variety of research questions addressing different aspects of the interface between large carnivores and agropastoral systems. So the methodology needs to be adequate, and we are conducting a multi-pronged review addressing different data sources. So obviously we have the scientific literature, but we're also focusing on the technical literature and on key informants. And today I will focus mostly on the technical literature. And one of the main sources here is the Carnivore Damage Prevention newsletter, which is something that has been going on for some time. So it started in spring 2000, and it's still going on. There are around 30 issues so far, and basically there was a gap, I think, between 2005 and 2014. But this is an important point for all the people that are interested in the damage prevention, but also all the other measures that can lead to coexistence with large carnivores. So there are so many articles, including participatory processes, engagement with stakeholders, and other measures. So that's one of the main reasons why I'm targeting this source. And so far, this is work in progress. I reviewed 15 out of the 30 issues available, and I'm looking obviously at the effectiveness of different measures, but also at the enablers and the challenges encountered. But today, I'm going to focus more on the second data source of technical literature, which is the beautiful live project dataset available online, which is where we can find all the live projects that have been funded since the inception of these funding stream in the early 90s. So we have hundreds of projects here. And so far, I reviewed twice the whole dataset by screening, obviously, those projects that were targeting the large carnivores that we are interested in. So, for example, as key terms for the search, I used the brown bear, the gray wolf, both the Eurasian and the Iberian lynx, and also the Wolverine. And then I selected the projects based on the inclusion criteria, which in this case was our focus on targeting the interface between large carnivores and the practices in agropastoral systems. As you can imagine, over more than 30 years, there has been quite a variety of actions used. So it's not just about preventive measures, but a lot of measures that were targeting compensation schemes, market mechanisms, engagement. So I needed a categorization. And just quickly, obviously, one of the main categories is preventive measures. And here we have livestock guardian dogs, electric fencing, supplementary feeding, and I will say something more in a few minutes about these, flagery and modified grazing patterns. But we also have market mechanisms and incentives. So different forms of employment, ecotourism, and incentives for specific farming practices, compensation, including for predatory damage, but also income loss for other resource uses, including forestry, engagement, which covered the whole spectrum from awareness raising to consultation and participation, governance. So it's mostly about management, action plans, both at the regional and national level, intervention protocols, and then monitoring and intervention. Again, not that much on the ecological side of things, because we're interested in that interface with people, but more about surveillance of anthropogenic threats and large carnivore emergency teams. Environmental management, most of the times it was about land rental, land acquisition for reforestation and habitat restoration projects and measures. And also we had measures concerning wildlife management, including translocation of large carnivores and prey. And then finally, regulation of anthropic activities, including access and use of different resources. So just to get into some preliminary results, the live projects that I selected were 136 out of the 158 targeting large carnivores. And in 88 instances, these were about bears, in 53 cases about wolves, in 22 about the Iberian lynx, 14 about the Eurasian lynx, and 1 the wolverine. Just a word of warning here, basically, these are not cumulative figures because several projects targeted more than one species. So to visualize that, we can have a different graph. This is quite colorful, but I can talk you through that. And as you can see, for example, in dark blue, there were many projects targeting the brown bear individually. And the same thing for the Iberian lynx with the orange color. And that could be due, for example, to the fact that the Iberian lynx has a very specific geographical distribution. But there are other colors highlighting the fact that several projects targeted more than one species at a time. And we have in light green, in recent years, for example, one project that targeted both the brown bear, the wolf, the Eurasian lynx, and the wolverine. There's another thing here to say. You can see a different frequency of projects across time, but that's due to the fact that at the beginning, in the 90s, different life projects were funded. Well, the same project was funded by different funding allocations. So that's not to say this doesn't show the fact that there are fewer life projects at the moment. So getting to the practices, we can see here that most of the times different projects used engagement measures, preventive measures towards the right, but there was a good variety of measures implemented to regulate the interface between large carnivores and pastoral systems. The only one that was less used is the category concerning incentives and market mechanisms. So that could be due to the fact that in those cases, it's not about a very localized measure. It's more about a system measure that sometimes concerns different sectors, and it's usually implemented at a higher economic scale. So there might be, funding and time constraints. There might be some limitations in terms also of capacity. So it might be easier to get implemented an engagement measure rather than an incentive scheme. And if we want to look at these measures concerning the different species, we can see here, for example, on the left column, that the bear was a sort of a testing ground for all these different measures. Obviously, we have in the darker shades engagement and preventive measures, and the same thing for the wolf on a lighter shade. But we can see that there's a good variety, a good distribution of these measures across all the species, apart from the wolverine, which, as I mentioned earlier, was targeted by a single project. But there are also some preliminary patterns that I've seen emerging. So speaking of engagement, for example, this has changed a lot over the years. So in the beginning, especially in the 90s, this was mostly about awareness raising. So talking to people about large carnivores, preventive measures, and other things related to the project. But over time, this has evolved to consider a deeper level and more cross-sectional level of engagement. So, for example, consultation and participatory processes in implementation, but also in taking decisions, so in the decision-making processes. In terms of another important category, so preventive measures, obviously, livestock guardian dogs and electric fencing were the most widespread categories. But at the same time, there were other interesting patterns. For example, supplementary feeding was used a lot early on, not just to have the recovery of wild populations, but also as a preventive measure. That was explicitly mentioned in different projects. But over time, I noticed that that has declined. Another important category was the monitoring and the intervention. Again, at the beginning, there was a tendency of using monitoring in the form of surveillance of human activities, in particular illegal persecution. But over time, this has changed and morphed into something more structured and more comprehensive in the form of, for example, large carnivore intervention team, which obviously also has to deal with problem and confident individuals. Obviously, going through all these plethora of data, I encountered several instances, several projects where effectiveness was reported. This, again, is work in progress. There might be a bias here because there was a lot of reporting of a successful measure, but at the same time, it might also mean that practitioners were able to design and implement scheme and measures that were adapted to the local context. So what's next? I'm at the moment collecting more information from the projects that we have selected. So I'm gathering more documents, more reports from each live project. And this is going to lead to an analysis, a deeper analysis at the subcategory level. So not just about preventive measures, for example, in general, but also more specific about livestock guardian dogs, about electric and non-electric fencing, about flagery and other deterrent measures. And this is going, obviously, is finalized towards the identification of barriers and enablers, and also to quantify the effectiveness of each measure. And to contribute to this search of effectiveness, I'm back now to the visual summary of the methodology. I'm going also to collect data from key informants. And obviously, over the last 30 and more years, there are around people that have gathered so much experience and expertise on preventive measures. And so the aim here is to collect their perspectives and their experiences directly from them through a survey. So this is going to be a mixed survey with both qualitative and quantitative data. And obviously, I'm going to target people involved in CoCo because there's so much expertise within CoCo. But also, I'm going to select and contact the personnel involved in the previous live projects that I have selected. And also, again, here, I'm happy to receive some suggestions. I'm interested in reaching out for other networks. So I'm open to suggestions. And I have my email at the end of the presentation where you can send me suggestions. And just to conclude, the progress here is that the survey is ready for being sent out, and it's just waiting for ethical approval. And the final data source that I mentioned earlier is scientific literature. I'm also, in the meantime, collecting opportunistically and through snowball sampling more data, quantitative mostly, about effectiveness of preventive measures. So this is work in progress. And if I have the time, hopefully it will be the case, I will go through the libraries of the Large Carnivore Initiative and also the IUCN Human Wildlife Coexistence Library. But that's it for now. And so thanks for listening and questions.
Thank you, Filippo.
Let me exit the share screen. 1 second.
Yeah, sure. In the meantime, if you have questions, please write them down in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I still see no question about this. Oh, okay. We have one from Mihai.
Mihai, why do you think bears dominate the numbers of projects? Well, that's an interesting one. I think if we think that from an historical perspective, there were several instances, several countries where the bear population was quite endangered in the early 90s. So I think that in a way, apart from being a charismatic species, led to a lot of funding towards that species. I can think about, for example, the LIFE project that led to the reintroduction of brown bears in the north of Italy. And as I mentioned also, there were several projects targeting the same aims. So that there's a bias there. But yeah, of course, is a charismatic species. It was an endangered species in several local contexts, and at the same time is one that deserves quite a lot of attention, both from an ecological and social perspective, because it can be a problematic species. So a few reasons here. Yeah.
Another one.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. With recommendations considering different populations and regions. Yeah, so that's one of the, we would like to look into that. So as CoCo is considering, for example, 12 different countries, we're also, with this task, we're also opening up a little bit the geographical scope across the whole European continent. So we will, we might be able to pick up some other patterns across Europe and across species, of course.
Okay, I think we can go on.
Yep.
Arianna, thank you again, Filippo. Here's the floor.
Yes, thank you.
You can go.
Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, still not in presentation mode.
Now?
Maybe that's slow, not yet. Okay, now we do. You can go.
Hey. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Arianna Menzano. I'm a veterinary and I work for the Italian partner University of Turin. I have been working for 20 years on issues related to wolf presence and conflicts with domestic livestock. And one of the key topics in this field is the implementation of effective strategies to reduce the risk of carnivore attacks. So in this presentation, I will mainly focus on our experience with the use of fencing and in particular on the key aspects to consider to ensure that this preventing tool is as effective as possible in reducing the risk of wolf attacks on livestock. So we will propose you practical fencing solution used obviously in our territory. So the study area, our study area is above all the Piemonte region, located in the northwest part of Italy, where wolves initially return in a natural way in the 90s, and they reoccupied the alpine areas before, and then they expanded their range to include also lowland and hilly regions. So in the picture in the bottom, you can see the situation of the wolf presence in 2024. So those are the areas occupied by the wolves. And now we have about monitored in Piedmont 460 wolves. And for what concerns the livestock, Piemonte is well suited above all for cattle farming, and we have about 580,000 cattle, adult cattle, and about 200,000 sheep and goats. So since the 90s, the wolves have naturally returned to Italian Alps after nearly a century of absence. And this is obviously a success for conservation, but it also creates new challenges for livestock farming due to the issue of depredation, of course. And beyond the economic impact, these events also create stress to farmers and can lead to conflicts between conservation goals and agricultural activities. And in our area, for example, the greatest impact of depredation is on small livestock, above all, because sheep and goats are the wolves' preferred prey due to their smaller body size. However, in terms of economic impact, the greatest impact is, of course, on cattle. And recently, issues related to wolf presence have also begun to affect lowland and hilly areas, which are also more heavily human influenced, because wolves have expanded recognized these territories. So, the methods currently used to prevent wolf attacks are different. The most widespread and well-known are the use of electrified fences, the presence of livestock guarding dogs, and the presence of a shepherd accompanying the animal during grazing. Fencing is one of the most effective ways to prevent wolves from accessing livestock, and in Italy, preventive measures such as fencing are strongly encouraged. The main distinction between fences is whether they are electrified or not. A non-electrified fence for protecting livestock is a sturdy physical barrier made of wood, wire, or mesh, and its purpose is to prevent predators from entering, of course, but it is rarely efficacious because wolves can dig underneath, climb over it, or break through it, rendering the fence ineffective. For example, in this picture, you can see a fence built to protect deer. And we have the true experience about those big enclosures with deer inside. Those enclosures had a fence with a height of 220 centimeters with net buried, but wolves learned to climb to prey the animal inside and to exit undisturbed. So they were not at all efficacious. We had a lot of depredation inside these two fences. And there are also numerous videos online showing how wolves are able to climb over the fences. So, an electrified fence, on the other hand, works by delivering a short, safe electric shock to any animals that touches it. The fence is connected to an energizer, which sends pulses of electricity along the wires or the net. And the systems create an open circuit, so the conducting wire is live, but no current flows until it is touched. When a predator or another animal makes contact with the electric wire, it closes the circuit. The shock startles it and discourages further attempts to cross the fence, teaching the animal to stay away from the protected area. So the key point is that to obtain a maximum effectiveness, it is important that the fence is properly installed, properly maintained, and above all grounded in the correct way. Those are the components of an electric fences. And if we come back to the previous enclosure I showed you before, to make the fence with the deer inside effective, we modified it, installing electrified wire, so to to make it more efficacious. So we added 2 electrified wires at the top with an angle of 90 degrees. In this way, when the wolves go up, the wires, the electrified wires, push the wolves downward, and another one electrified wire was put at the bottom to deter wolves from attempting to climb. And in both the 2 cases, so in both enclosures with deer inside, the result was positive and no further depredation occurred. So it was a bigger result for us. So in the Italian context, if we talk about electric fences, they are the most widely used solution for prevention, especially in the alpine pastures. We can use 2 types of electrified fences. We can have wire fences or mesh net fences. In general, the choice mainly depends on the species to be protected and on the type of the environment. A wire electric fence can consist of a variable number of wires, and they can be permanent or mobile. In the Alps, a single wire electric fencing is the most used for cattle protection, and generally it is used to not for protection but for delimiting grazing areas. Because animals can exit from these fences. In the case of cattle, in fact, it is important that the fenced areas are not too large so that the livestock does not scatter, becoming more vulnerable to attacks. You can consider that in Piemonte, for example, we mainly have beef breeds which are able to defend themselves when they are kept in a group. So it is important to maintain animals in group. However, we recommend farmers to use at least 2 or 3 electrified wires, not to avoid wolves from entering in the fencing, but to prevent calves from escaping the enclosure and becoming easy prey for wolves, like in the picture on the bottom, when you can see a cat that exited from the enclosure. In the case of small livestock, more wires are necessary, and the lowest one should not be higher than 10 centimeters. But this type of electric fence is rarely used because it's not so efficacious. And due to the significant effort they required, these fences are generally or fixed or semi-permanent, so they are not easily to use on an alpine context. The electrified net fences are above all used to protect sheep and goats. These fences create a barrier that prevents predators from entering the enclosure, and they are relatively easy to install and to move, making them suitable for transhumance and for seasonal grazing, and they are so very used in the alpine context. We usually use net fences that are at least 120 centimeters of height, and we consider shorter ones completely ineffective. It is true that a wolf can learn to jump over even taller fences, but in our experience, if the fence is properly maintained, this rarely happens. In any case, the presence of guardian dogs inside the fence or outside further increase the effectiveness of the method. We have to pay attention to some key elements in the use of net electrified fences. For example, the height of the fence, the fence must be tall enough and strong enough for the species we want to protect. The fence must follow the contours of the land to prevent gaps underneath or weak points. It is important to regularly check for breaks, loose wires, or vegetation touching the fence that could short-circuit it. We have to check regularly the voltage that should be between 4,000 and 6,000 volts and more than 300 millijoule. The size of the enclosure is also important to consider because the areas should not be too small to prevent livestock from becoming frightened and vulnerable, and it should have also a circular perimeter to prevent livestock from crowding into a corner and knocking the fence down. And obviously, it is important to have also dog inside. So, the most effective strategy in Italy is to use fencing during the night or in case of bad weather, which are the condition where the attacks are more likely to occur. And it is important to integrate this method with other solutions like guarding dogs, or stick deterrents, and so on. Fences could be used also to record the most vulnerable animals, for example, newborn or ill animals. It is important to clear vegetation regularly, to check voltage frequently, to train also the farmers so that they are aware of what to pay attention to, and in order to improve fence effectiveness and to reduce the risk of depredation. And in particularly challenging situation, we can propose other solution. For example, a double electrified fence. You can see this on the bottom. This fence is composed by two electrified nets separated by a corridor of 1 or 2 meters, which further reduces the risk of depredation, but obviously requires a greater labor efforts. Some years ago, we analyzed the preventive systems in place during more than 480 attacks on small livestock, and we considered the presence of livestock guarding dogs, electrified fences, and the presence of shepherd. And in this table, we can see that if no prevention systems were used, we had about 45% of depredation, while when a single system was used, the depredation ranged from 26 to 6%, depending on the typology of prevention system used. But the best results were achieved by combining together 2 or 3 preventive measures, and where we reached very few attacks, and above all with no cases of attacks with more than 4 victims. So, considering the Italian context, above all the northern context, we can say that we have advantages in the use of fences when they are used correctly, because they represent an effective tool for reducing the risk of attacks. And consequently, they reduces the need for compensation claims. Often they are supported by regional or EU funding, and they are compatible with traditional farming, and they are cost effective over time, and also they are environmental friendly if they are moved regularly to prevent an excessive deposit of feces and an excessive trampling by the animals. But they have also some limitation. In fact, they need an initial labor and cost if they are not supported by specific funds. They need a regular inspection of all components and they require maintenance. And sometimes they are difficult to use, for example, due to a difficult terrain, for example, rocky soils, steep slopes, and dense vegetation can make installation and maintenance more difficult. In conclusion, we can say that in Piemonte, the electric fencing has significantly reduced the predation events. They are a fundamental tool for managing wolf livestock conflict. It is better to use fences in combination with other protection measures because we obtained the best result. Fencing can be considered a key tool for reducing conflict between wolves and livestock farming because when they are used correctly, they help ensure both economic sustainability and wildlife conservation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Arianna. Thank you so much. I think you already have one question. Dara again says, here in Abruzzo, some cow breeders that keep their cows in the mountains claim that cow cannot be kept at night in temporary enclosure. They saw cows eat mostly at night when temperatures are lower, so need to roam and eat during the night. Have you encountered similar situation or do you have any ideas for solution?
Yes, this is true also for sheep and goats, above all when the temperatures are very high. And you can, this is a problem because we always suggest farmers to avoid creating huge fencing, but it is true that animals prefer to eat during the night. So the solution could be to separate animals in smaller groups to give them pastures higher to use and to use more prevention tools. For example, we use also fledri that are flags, red flags, able to deter the presence of wolves. When we used fledri, we didn't have attacks, and so a suggestion should be the use of fledri, combine the use of fledri to the use of electrified fences.
I can write it down.
Okay.
Okay.
They are not so easy to find in commerce.
You are also experimenting fledri with electricity, right?
Electricity, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. We are trying this system in an enclosure we have with wolves inside, and we have quite good results considering that they are animals living in captivity, and so they have the food inside this enclosure with fledri, and they not choose to go in another part.
Okay. Thank you so much, Arianna. I think we don't have extra time for questions, so thank you again, and we leave the floor to Luisa.
Yes, I need to apologize myself, but my internet connection not so good. If there is no problem, I put off my camera during the presentation. I prefer.
An issue? Okay, you can go.
Okay. I take a minute to share my screen. Tell me if you see my presentation, please.
Okay, now we do. Yes.
Okay.
You can go.
Good evening to. I'm Luisa Vielmi. I worked for the Institute Apply Ecology for this project, but usually I work as a technician for an association. This organization Burn Inside Life, and the name is Difesa Attiva. My work, my job is on the focus on my job are livestock protection dogs. So I'll show you the situation in Italy. In Italy, the most widespread livestock protection dogs are the Abruzzese Maremmano sheepdog, and over the last decade, also the Sila shepherd. While those are recognized as breeds, most of those working dogs do not hold a formal pedigree. In the world of modern cynology, they would technically be defined as mixed breeds. However, this definition is, according to me, misleading. The reality is that pastoral selection is far older than the Fédération Cynologique Internationale, which was founded only at the beginning of the last century. Since ancient time, dating back to the before Christ, shepherds have always selected the best individuals based on their ability to protect the flock. This functional selection predates modern breed standards and represents an individual genetic and cultural heritage. So most popular breeds in Italy, we have two breeds. The first one known worldwide, the Abruzzese Maremmano sheepdog, the name is changed now in the last month, is the maximum icon of livestock protection in Italy. It is often debated more for its name, with many talking over that Maremmano should be dropped in favor of only Abruzzese, than for its remarkable real-world skills. Its true power of this breed lies in its adaptability to various environments, from plains to high mountains, different activities such as educational farms or sheepdog centers, and a wide range of animals to protect, including poultry, alpacas, pigs, and so on. Historically, the origins of rooted in transhumance livestock farming, and however, today I show you three different types. They are Abruzzese Maremmano sheepdog. In this picture, you have three different dogs, and only one with a pedigree. But I think that you can't understand which one have this. And I told you before, today this breed has successful transitional to modern rules. It is now found on sedentary farm or a small farm with a few animals. Very often those dogs live and work interiorly within mobile electric fences, as showed you before, Arianna, alongside the herd throughout the summer grazing season. On the other hand, we have Sila shepherd, began spreading across Italy about a decade ago, as I told you before. originally bred in Calabria by local shepherds. Most of all, they have goats. This type of shepherd has goats. It was initially introduced as an example of a protection dog with height docility towards humans, included strangers. Because of this trait, along with its linear and more agile build compared to the Abruzzese Maremmano, the breed has become increasingly sought after. While it is correct to say the breed is generally more docile by nature, it is crucial to remember that this does not guarantee the temperament of every single dog. However, the growing concern about among shepherds regarding potential conflict, we all know, with the tourists, has significantly driven the spread of Sila shepherd across many Italian regions. So global, as shown in this image from this classic yet still highly relevant study, according to me, the number of livestock protection dogs range between 30 and 40. It is important to note that not all these are recognized by FCA. Many of those population exist as land races and selected for sanctuary by shepherds based loosely on their ability to survive and protect livestock rather than an aesthetical standard. This highlights that the true value of those dogs lies in their functional heritage and local adoption. Even if I told you before that the most important spare breed in Italy are the Abruzzese Maremmano sheepdog and Sila sheepdog, when I go on the field, I found this dog. So the reality on the ground is often different. When visit farm, I frequently encounter crossbreeds or dogs that do not strictly meet the physical standards of a specific breed. However, the shepherds of this dog, for the shepherd, these dogs hold the exact same value. Their value is measured by the ability to protect the livestock and their success in reducing predation losses. This confirms that in the pastoral world, functional efficiency is far from the important that its physical appearance or a certificate such as pedigree. Shepherd told me, I think he told me that a good dog isn't defined by its color, but by the safety of the flock it guards. All the time, I underline that it's very important if shepherds want to have a mixed breeding to know to learn about the physical and mental characteristic of each dog as breed and also as individual. This is important to handle the dog self. This view is supported by an interesting study where genetic and analysis review two probably origins of the livestock protection dogs. And this study underlines several crucial points. First, the genetic wealth, and they underlines how the show lines are dogs breed for beauty, in this case, this type of dog has reduced in this dog the genetic biodiversity. The genetic diversity is often reduced, and on the other side, pastoral selection preserves a high level of genetic richness. And but also the research emphasizes that the strictly adhering to a breed standard is not a guarantee of better livestock protection skills. For the last point, but not for the importance of this point, this work underlying the pastoral selection focuses on resilience and instinct, ensuring the dog remains a robust and capable guardian, rather than just an aesthetic representative of a category. So, what is a dog? What is a livestock protection dog? Every time I tell that is a dog. So, if a dog is not just a product of its genetics, it is so much more. Every dog possesses a mind, and its action and behaviors are driven by thoughts, which in turn are rooted in a deep foundation on emotion. So dogs are genetic, personality, individuality, emotion, experience, state of height, resilience, and not for least motivation. This is the approach of Difesa Attiva. We approach from problem to individual. Every time I try to understand, first of all, the character of each dog and the dog inside the breed, inside the pack, and the dog also inside the flock. It's for important to the education that they grow, and also the how to integrate the dog inside a single farm. For this project, I work in two different areas, in Abruzzo and in Toscana. And in Abruzzo, I observed at least 80% of the time, the shepherd is physically present with the flock during grazing. The dogs are almost exclusive white, so I use this term. Okay. Notable, I never encountered the use of mobile electric fencing in this area during the day. However, I didn't notice some unconventional choices, as you can see in one picture. Some shepherds have adopted different type of dogs, opted to crossbreed their dogs with breeds like the Central Asian Shepherd. More strange was when I met a breeder who used a hand dog, so as a livestock protection dog, and you can see in the picture here. Okay, and the shepherd said to me it was a female, and he said me she tends to keep her distance from the livestock when we are out grazing. And my response was simply, well, she's a hunting dog, not a livestock protection dog. On the other hand, in the province of Grosseto in Tuscany, in the south of Tuscany, 90% of the dogs are white. However, the management style is completely different from the other area, because in more than 90% of cases, the livestock graze without a shepherd present. All the flocks are alone on a field with the livestock protection dogs. The sheep are divided into several smaller groups grazing independently accompanied only by the livestock protection dogs. Similar to the observation in Abruzzo, mobile electric fences is not used here. And during my field visit, I encountered only one instance where the sheep were left alone without the dog. In conclusion, during my work, I noted that every livestock breeder complained several critical issues, and I report every issue here in this slide. The problem is the maintenance cost, because the dogs are very expensive for the feed and the veterinary care, lack of technical support. When they have a problem, they don't know who could call, and low respect from tourists, lack of consideration of private property, and the vital role of livestock protection dog for a farm. And also general issues such as a lack of a legal framework. They want a specific legislation for the dog, specific law for the dog to protect and underline the value of the dog. A lack of official date. We don't know in Italy how many dogs we have on field, and this is I talk about the livestock protection dogs. We don't know the number. And also the technical and financial support is inconsistent. Most of the region here in Italy support only the dog who has a pedigree certificate. So thank you for your attention. I'm here for your question.
Thank you, Luisa. Thank you so much. Amazing talk. I don't know if we have time for question. I suggest you can write question down in the chat, and we have to recover. We are a bit late. We can let Mihai talk, and then we have a question. No, it's not you. It's
okay.
It's okay. We can just try and recover a little bit of time, and then we have question all together. But please ask your question to Luisa and her super interesting presentation. And the floor is for Mihai.
If you count on me talking less, we have a problem, Houston.
Okay.
So yeah, my name is Mihai Pop. I'm from Romania. In the last 20 years, I work mostly on bear ecology, but also on coexistence in the Romanian Carpathians. And thank you for the invitation to tell some stories about Romanian Carpathians and pastoralism. My plan was to show you some glimpse of how it looks 19 years ago, 14 years ago. And I hope that this would be useful to ask a better question on how we can make coexistence a long tradition from now on. So a little bit of a context in Romania. The Romanian Carpathians occupy a territory of approximately 66,000 square kilometers. And pastoralism, it's probably older than 2,000 years. I didn't want to say, I don't know, 6,000 or 8,000, but for sure it's more than 2,000 years in our region. And today, Romania hosts and manage over 20 million sheep and goats, and it's the second country after Spain for this livestock. But at the same time, Romanian Carpathians and the hill area are hosting some of the largest population of brown bears and wolves and lynxes, together with this ancient occupation pastoralism is. So we see that from our perspective, this occupation, it's of being a shepherd, is very important for our community, for us in Romania. So, and somehow I guess this is obvious from what happened also in the past. Pastoralism was a structural element in the mountain regions of Romania, but not only in the mountain regions, but also in the lowland. For sure, it has an impact. It had an impact on language, and vocabulary belongs to very oldest Latin and pre-Roman language, not only in the Carpathians, but also we share wars with Balkan regions and with northern regions from Poland, in northern Carpathians in Poland and in other parts of Europe. Also, within the mountain region, pastoralism shaped the communities because they were like very different kind of communities compared with hill area communities and lowland communities. They were more independent in relation to authorities, and I would say more solid in terms of resilience towards different influence, political or I don't know, external influences. But what it's also more important for us today is that most of our culture, it's rooted in the pastoral activities, costume, motifs, musical instruments. They are all they shaped in the last centuries our cultures and our aesthetics in the Carpathians. So one key element of Carpathian pastoralism is the transformance. It's not only for the Carpathians but for the whole region, because it was some kind of a unifying force. Shepherds have been for centuries involved in sharing knowledge, information from mountain regions to lowlands. They were bringing products from Greek and Turkish ports at the Black Sea. And also they were like changing information within different regions, like from cities of and villages from Transylvania. They were transporting information in the south part of the Danube and in other regions. So they were somehow messaging. They were connectors of the region, cultural connectors. Sharing knowledge on dogs, livestock, which breed is better, which breed is suitable for protection, or which kind of sheep is better for milk, and which one is better for meat. So they were an important part of the communities, rural communities in Romania. So being a shepherd in the past implied from my perspective, a lot of dedication and a lot of training from young age, but also entrepreneurial skill. Shepherds were always part of the Romanian economy. They were responsible of a huge part of the tribute that Wallachians and Romanians were paying to the Ottoman Empire. They were providing food in the mountain regions, also representing ship owners in the markets. Therefore, they had to have a lot of skills and knowledge, and these skills and knowledge offered them a strong voice in relation with the authorities. So in 1935, the Romanian shepherds make a huge congress in Sibiu, in southern Transylvania, and they discussed the problem that they faced during that time. At that time, Romania was a kingdom. So the problem was that sheep breeds were degenerating. Pastures were less and less used started to have different use like they used to have in the past. They were affected by the capacity to sell their products, and also they were affected by many and very taxes at that time. So because they tried to organize themselves and to put pressure on the government to solve these issues, they also made some proposal for the government at the time, and they required, for example, that the government should organize schools for shepherds and for sheepfolds, in which young shepherds should be learn how to do their job, how to manufacture cheese, for example. Also, 19 years ago, they were interested in like except of tax. They want the tax to be lower than they were, and also they were looking for some kind of subsidies from the government. But what I wanted to point out in relation to coexistence is that 19 years ago, Romanian shepherds were asking and were trying to get involved in the management of large carnivore, especially the bears. So at that time, compensation, surprisingly, compensation and payments were also on the table, on the political discussion at that point. The problem is that at that point, the government didn't agree to fund the losses. So most of the payments for damages were paid by hunters or by nobility, local nobility, who own land and who were like somehow, involved in the local communities as leaders. So for Romanian shepherds at that time, 19 years ago, and probably a long time before, for sure a long time before, the prevention was the only tool available. So if you wanted to have very few losses, you need to pay you had to make real efforts to protect your sheep flock. And in terms of size and how the sheep flocks were managed at that point, I guess considering the information from our days, one shepherd was able to handle probably 100, 150 sheep, dairy sheep, for the mountain season during the summer. So if you had like a sheep flock of 1,000, 2,000 sheep, a community sheep flock, you needed at least 10 to 15 shepherds to manage it. So there was a huge human resources involved in managing the sheep, but also involved in the protection of the animals. So coming a little bit closer to our days, 40 years ago, in Covasna County, where I live, we had 40 years ago communist period, post-war system that centralized everything, all the decision, and farmers they moved from private-owned livestock managing to state-owned managing. Although this was more for cattle, also the government allowed farmers to keep one or two kettles or like having sheep around the house. But generally the economy was owned by the state, and all the farms, big farms, were managed by the state. But also at that time there was a lot of conflicts, especially with bears. So and every time the local people were asking authorities to help them in terms of managing the conflicts. A lot of livestock killed by bears, efforts to protect the farms, including like relocating bears. It was something that was done 14 years ago in Romania. But in the end, they always request for the problem bear to be removed. So this was somehow the image on what happened during the communist time is just a short glimpse on what happened there. But the problem from the beginning of the last century remained also valid during the communist time. So coming to our days, I would say that the context is more or less the same in terms of conflicts between humans and wildlife, but probably the numbers are higher than they used to be. So now you see on the map where Covasna County is in the middle of Romania, in southeastern part of Transylvania, close to Brașov. Probably some of you know Brașov as a reference point for Romania. So in the last 3 years, from 2003 to 2005, only in this county we had over 800 incidents, predation incident caused by bears, and very few caused by wolves. So in our region, the bears would be the main problem. Also, you have the numbers of livestock killed. If we compare the numbers with the numbers from 40 years ago, I would say that the numbers are double than they used to be. But also the quota and the intervention on the problem bears, it's probably, I would say, 5 times bigger than it used to be during the communist time. So the number of bear killed legally in our county, it's much higher than they used to be. So this will be the context of livestock breeding and especially sheep farming in Romania. So what didn't change? Didn't change the practices by itself. The same type of sheepfold on which you work during the summer. So usually the sheep are going to the mountains between 15 after 15 of May, and they stay until the end of September, depending on the weather condition, of course. But the structure of the farm remains the same, and also the importance of having apprentices as the farm at the sheepfold in the mountain remain an objective, because this is the only way in which shepherds in Romania they understand to pass the tradition further. So during the summer, in our days, you will still find apprentices, like young boys living and staying and helping their father or their uncles at the family farm in the mountains. And from them I learned that you really need a passion to be a shepherd. It's not a job that can be done by everybody. Also, when it's about protection, I would say that things didn't change much. So in Romania, faith in a deity and protection of sheep by a dog, and using different tools to protect the dogs in the end, because also the dogs need protection, remain more or less the same within the centuries. So I would say what we see today in the Carpathian sheepfold in the mountains, it's something that you could have seen probably like, I don't know, 200, 400 years ago, except the cars probably, and some plastic things that you can see from time to time appearing there. In a past project, a live project that we had in the region a couple of years ago, we identify in the region, in our region, in the Eastern Carpathians, we identify 3 types of male farming. Probably this classification is not quite corresponding to the agricultural standard, but from the perspective of preventions, we found this kind of 3 types of farm. We have the industrial farm, so intensive, semi-intensive, large-scale businesses where animals are kept indoor. And for those kind of farms, we assess a low risk of predation. We have, and this was a little bit surprising for us, we have the traditional mountain sheepfold, which are usually located in the large carnivore habitat, and they are living, I don't know, more than half of the year close to predators. But in the end, the risk was assessed as being moderate, because somehow the shepherds, when they go up into the mountains, into the mountain pasture, they know that they enter into some kind of a conflict area, conflict zone, and they somehow pay attention to all this risk. And we have the small holding, usually in the villages, in the mountain villages, at the edge of village, in the contact with forest, on which we have the highest surplus killing cases. And animals are not always kept in a very safe environment. So from our assessment at the time, we assessed that this kind of farm are in a higher risk than the one from the mountains. And the reason is that when you go up in the mountains, we have traditionally like 4 elements of protections. So we have the shepherd camp, which took different kind of a shape depending on the region, depending on the resources. But usually this was like a refuge for the shepherds, but also you can build it. You can see in the picture in the right some kind of a citadel that you can protect. Not citadel, sorry, like a protection, kind of a wooden protection system that it can help you during the night. Also, what it's very important for our system in the Carpathians is that shepherd presence it's continuously. So day and night, 24 hours. The shepherds are present with the animals. Also, we have the large guardian dogs, livestock guardian dogs. I will not insist on them, but what it's also typical for our region is this night enclosure that are protected by this, we call them coliba. There are several words for it, but this is kind of a sleeping box that is placed next to the night coral or in the proximity of the sheepfold, somewhere between the forest and where the animals are. So the shepherds can react very fast during the night because the large guardian dogs, livestock guardian dogs, they are not really functioning very well if the shepherd is not present. When we discuss about the dogs
Mihai, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt. Just to let you know, 2-3 minutes maximum
I'm
left.
trying
Okay.
to go faster. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have traditional like four breeds of dogs. But as Luisa mentioned, at this point we have an import of other breeds from other area like Kangal or dogs from Central Asia that are used also by the shepherds. So we have also other methods implemented in the last years, like electric fences, Flandry, like you said before, but also like substances and all kind of devices that made noises, and they also make some kind of a light that can disturb a little bit the predators. But what we know, it's basically on this kind of a long historical data that we are struggling to put together, is that the conflicts and the coexistence is always context dependent. So we have to look for context dependent solution. And what is valid for the Romanian Western Carpathian is not valid for the Romanian Eastern Carpathian. So we have to approach things differently from region to region, and to be sure that we make transfer of the best practices where there are really good best practices in the area in which we want to implement them. Also, now we have a higher capacity to understand what's happening from the researcher perspective. So we can come and explain to people that there is a difference between how damages and what are the risk factors for a cattle farm and what are the risk factors for a sheep flock. So we have all this knowledge, and all this knowledge is suitable to design and make something like race map, so which can improve also the strategies of the government, how to where to subsidize the efforts for mitigating conflicts and for supporting coexistence. The problem is that when we checked when we did the field work for the CoCo project this last summer, we noticed that somehow, if we check the historical information, shepherds were getting information from peers, from their own association, and also from the researcher, and not so much from hunting association, and not from the media. Of course, media didn't exist in this shape 50, 900 years, 90 years ago. But what was a little bit disappointed for me was the fact that researchers are not something that they are like influencing the decision of the shepherds or like building trust to them. So we have to think if present shepherds are shifting trust toward different factors compared to what happened in the past, and understand who are those entities or institutions that can support coexistence for shepherds. And this leads to another question: if we are facing or we are not facing some kind of a shifting baseline syndrome in pastoralism, on which we continuously, generation after generation, we redefine normality without a conflict or some kind of a normality in terms of coexistence. And I guess this is a kind of a topic that needs to be more explored because we don't know exactly what normal mean in the farm for a farmer like 100 years ago, what means today, and also what will happen in the future, and not in terms only on conflicts, but also in terms of practices. If this new generation, they will accept to decrease their attention towards mitigating and preventive system. So a lot of recommendation for the end, but now I don't have time. But I hope they will be available in the end when the registration will be online. Thank you for listen to me, and if you have question or time for question, ready to and happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Mihai. Really beautiful presentation. And I guess we don't have time for question again. We can find some time at the end for everyone to please ask your question in the chat while Robin can start his talk.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to share my presentation. Please let me know, Virginia, when you can see it.
Yes. Okay, something is showing up. Okay, still need to go presentation mode, but okay, you can go.
Yeah, all good. Okay. So I'll try to talk a bit faster to fit in the remaining time. Hello, everyone. And before I start, I'd just like to quickly thank our hosts, the European Federation of Animal Science, and my colleagues from the CoCo project for organizing this webinar on livestock protection across Europe, as well as all the participants who are joining us here. So for my presentation, we'll now move from Romania to Slovakia, just like the Wallachians who traveled along the Carpathian arc did in the 14th to 18th centuries, as shown on this map. So as the Wallachian culture spread north and west through the Carpathian Mountains, it brought a system of livestock grazing to these upland areas. So this included establishing summer farms or shepherd camps, as Mihai just showed, which are called salaše in Slovak. And these had a koliba, which in Slovak means something a little bit different from what Mihai showed. So koliba in Slovak is a hut with a fireplace to heat up milk and make and store cheese. And there are also some temporary portable enclosures for sheep, goats, or cattle, as shown in these illustrations. So from spring to autumn, the shepherds accompanied their flocks during the day for grazing and slept nearby to keep watch over them at night. Protection from predators, especially wolves and bears, was based on a combination of the presence of shepherds, guarding dogs, husbandry practices such as night penning, as well as killing predators. That was also part of the approach. Now, in Slovakia, these practices persisted into the mid-20th century. So as we can see, for example, from the work of the artist and folklorist Jan Haller, who lived in a rural community in Liptov, which is where I am now, in northern Slovakia from 1923 to 1959. And he documented the daily life that he saw around him with his illustrations and text. And he wrote this about livestock guarding dogs. Shepherds breed strong dogs of a special type characterized by strength and courage. They are clever, quick to learn, and are not afraid of wolves or bears, against which the shepherds keep them. And Slovakia even has a fairy tale featuring a livestock guarding dog, which was collected and published by Pavel Dobšinský in the late 19th century. So the story of Old Bodrik and the Wolf, or Starý Bodrik a Vlk in Slovak, begins with a description of a livestock guarding dog working perfectly. At a remote sheep farm lived a dog named Bodrik. For a long time, the shepherd was happy with him because he allowed no wolf to come near the sheepfold, neither during the day nor during the night. Oh, exactly what you want. But things changed after the Second World War, when much of farming was collectivized during Communist Party rule, and manuals on animal husbandry published in the 1950s and 60s, like this one on the left there, advised that guarding dogs could be kept chained up at the farm or shepherd camp rather than accompany flocks to pasture. Probably there was less need for protection measures at that time because large carnivores had been drastically reduced in range and numbers by hunting and persecution, and keeping them chained up would make them easier to handle. And keeping guarding dogs on chains became the norm, a standard practice, and you can see some examples of that in those photographs there. Legal protections of wolves from the 1970s, or partly protection, and bears from the 1930s allowed populations to begin to recover. And by the late 20th century, there was renewed concern about their impacts on livestock. My organization, the Slovak Wildlife Society, together with partners, sought to revitalize the traditional use of livestock guarding dogs, so to get them off those chains and back amongst the sheep, through the Protection of Livestock and Conservation of Large Carnivores project, which ran from 2000 to 2004. We provided livestock owners across the country with a total of 68 pups and assisted shepherds in the process of bonding them with sheep. There were many complications and things didn't always work out at all the farms, but those that managed to integrate livestock guarding dogs into their flocks reported 70% fewer losses to bears and wolves compared to other farms in the same regions. We published our findings in the journal ORIC, so if you're interested, you can find more details in the article I've included there. Now, that assessment, 70% fewer losses, was made when our project dogs were still young, mostly just 1 or 2 years old, and there were only 1 or 2 of them per farm. So we can imagine with a larger number of more experienced dogs, the effect would be even greater. But livestock guarding dogs do have some disadvantages. For example, it usually takes several months, often a year or more, to integrate them into a flock. Some farmers who were experiencing problems with predators asked us for a quicker solution. At several farms, we installed fladry, which consists of strips of material hung from a line, so you see in the photo on the left there, that wolves are reluctant to cross, probably due to their innate caution and neophobia. Fladry was originally used for hunting, but has been adapted for livestock protection and even used to live capture wolves in order to fit them with telemetry collars without using traps or tranquilizers. At all the farms where we tried it, wolf predation ceased after installing fladry. So it can provide at least short-term protection. After some time, the wolves may well learn that they don't need to worry about crossing it, but it can provide protection in the short term at least. We've also had good results with electric fencing that we've heard a lot about in other presentations, both to protect beehives from bears as well as sheep and cattle from bears and wolves. And 2 or more measures can be combined, as shown in the photograph there of fladry together with electric fencing. So up to now, I've been talking about wolves and bears, but I'd like to turn to lynx for a moment. In Slovakia, losses of livestock to lynx are rarely reported and affect less than 0.01% of available sheep. So it's a handful at most per year across the whole country. And that's despite lynx often being in close proximity to pastures. Why is this? I think there are probably several factors, including keeping livestock out of the forest, lambing indoors, the deterrent effect of human and dog presence, and an abundance of wild prey. I wrote an article for a publication called Carnivore Damage Prevention News that we've also heard about today, reviewing lynx predation on livestock in Europe and the various available preventive measures. So if you're interested in that, you have the title and QR code on the slide there. So I mentioned wild prey abundance is a likely factor in the low rate of lynx predation on livestock in Slovakia. We have some evidence indicating that this also applies to wolves. So, for example, the chart on the left here shows wolf numbers on the y-axis, closely follows those of red deer on the x-axis. By the way, the numbers of these numbers of wolves here are from game statistics, which don't reflect the actual number of wolves in Slovakia, but we can use them as an index to look at trends. So basically, more prey supports more wolves. And then on the right, for the same years, we can see that as wolf numbers increased, those wolves killed more deer, but they didn't kill more livestock. So this means that more wolves do not necessarily lead to more lost livestock. And this next slide shows losses of livestock reported in the Liptov region, plotted against estimated wolf numbers on the left side and numbers of wolves shot in the chart on the right. And there's no obvious correlation in either case. But nevertheless, many farmers and hunters remain convinced that predator control is key to livestock protection. Hunting is a deep-rooted tradition in Slovakia, but in the 21st century, the killing of wolves and bears has faced strong opposition, leading to considerable controversy, legal challenges, and social conflict. Now, in democracies, policies can change markedly as different governments come and go, and the influence of various lobbyists, stakeholders, and interest groups increase or decrease accordingly. And this certainly applies to large carnivore management in Slovakia. For example, the government that was in office from 2020 to 2023 prioritized non-lethal damage prevention measures, including livestock guarding dogs and electric fencing. They banned wolf hunting and minimized bear management removals, which, by the way, used to be called protection shooting when it was lethal and legal. Whereas in contrast, the current government has renewed wolf hunting and turned to relatively indiscriminate culling of bears. Can the interests of livestock farming, hunting, and conservation ever be reconciled? So a major initiative that is aiming to do so is CoCo, Co-Creating Coexistence, that we've already heard a lot about today. The vision of this EU Horizon Europe project is to transform an entrenched conflict to a future state where pastoralism is valued and viable and can coexist with wildlife in shared landscapes. In other words, we want to help people and wildlife thrive side by side. So for the last few slides, I'd like to show a little bit that we found from Slovakia. Amongst the many work packages and activities currently being implemented in 12 European countries are a series of case studies in diverse landscapes and regions. One of these is Liptov, where Jan Haller lived, where I'm speaking to you from now, and where we implemented our livestock guarding dog project that I already told you about. Liptov has substantial numbers of bears, wolves, and lynx living alongside sheep and cattle. And there's also a second case study area in Slovakia, in the eastern part of the country, a region called Šariš. So last year, 2025, we interviewed a total of 82 livestock farmers in these two regions and conducted detailed observations of the protection measures in use at 16 farms. And in the case of Liptov, so I had the opportunity to compare what I'd seen during our livestock guarding dog project about 25 years ago and how things are now. And I was surprised to find how much it had changed. Now, most of the pastoralists that we were talking to were more worried about bears than wolves, where it was the opposite 25 years ago. Although overall, from what they were saying, it seemed that wild boar and deer were causing more damage to their operations than carnivores, crops in the fields, and so on. There's also been some shift in focus from sheep to cattle in terms of husbandry, and a reduction in extensive grazing, with many of those seasonal shepherd camps abandoned in favor of fenced pastures. And this photo here is one of the last traditional Salasha that we found in Liptov, sadly. In terms of the protection measures that we saw last year, so although electric fencing is now commonly used, which was not the case 25 years ago, then it was very rare. Now it's common, but we found that it often did not fulfill parameters for predator deterrence, with evident deficiencies in design, installation, and maintenance, such as insufficient power or big gaps beneath the wires. We also found that livestock guarding dogs were still usually kept on chains. And if anything, that seemed to be an even more ingrained habit than before, with some shepherds saying it was even better that way. So data is still being analyzed, so I can't go into too much detail, but the reasons that farmers told us why this was the situation, why the preventive measures weren't more substantial. So they typically mentioned a lack of support. Of all of the farms that we visited, only one mentioned having any financial support from the state. There's an argument to say that the criteria for compensation payments are too strict. So they would have to invest a lot of money in order for their preventive measures to fulfill the criteria for getting compensation payments. So it seems that some of them therefore choose not to. It's just too expensive for them, and no one helps them, or except for some projects like ours. There's no systematic program to help them implement measures, and they're facing many other social economic challenges, such as shortage of labor. The interviews revealed several areas of agreement, though, between pastoralists and environmental protectionists. So both groups do support at least the concept, the principle of using preventive measures, protection measures for livestock. Both groups are in favor of paying compensation for damage, and also both recognize a need to remove individual problem predators that repeatedly cause damage. However, there's still a clear disparity on the question of predator population control, which a majority of farmers support, but protectionists oppose. Livestock farmers also tended to reject policies aimed at improving habitats for wildlife and promoting ecotourism. They seem to see that as a potential threat, that if we promoted bear watching, then there'd be more bears, which would cause them even more problems. Whereas both of those activities or ideas are advocated by protectionists. How these differences might be reconciled will be the focus of the rest of the CoCo project, hopefully. So I'll just leave you with these email addresses and websites where you can find more information about the CoCo project. You can contact me or read content in the Carnivore Damage Prevention News. And if we have time, I could try to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Robin, for staying in time. I guess we have 7 minutes where we can try and answer questions. And thank you also for leaving the project email. I was trying to write it down in our chat, but here is way better. So amazing. And again, we are here for questions. I've seen already some conversation going on with Luisa and Mihai, discussing about dogs in Romania, but okay, in the meantime, as we wait for people to ask questions, I just want everyone to remind everyone that we are going to provide some of these results we talked about, and Robin also nicely reminded everyone about. We have these 2 report deliverables that are going to be available soon in October, not that soon, but soon. So for the review and for the observation in the field, and this is an hint for you to follow the website. You can find a place for public deliverable on that too. And I don't know if we can wait a little bit, another 2 minutes, if any question pops up. I don't know if any of you want to say something to conclude. Otherwise,
shall I stop sharing now?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Oh, we have one question. Okay, if a measure from CAP RDP for prevention LC coexistence are too strict when applied, but no one care after incentive are given to farmers, source of frustration. Who wants to say something?
Maybe I could say, because I mentioned like specifically for within Slovakia. So it's already been the case for several decades, actually, that payments of compensation was conditional on using some prevention measures. But the initial law was quite flexible, let's say. Basically, if you had some kind of dog and offense, then that was usually accepted. But then this previous government to the current one, as I mentioned, that put much more emphasis on preventive measures, they really tightened up the law to be, and it's got very specific, about how many wires and the gaps between them, which on the one hand is a good thing, so not to be too vague, but I think they've made it way too strict. So it was very demanding for farmers to install measures that would match those criteria. And at the same time, they didn't provide any financial or practical help. It was just up to the farmers to do that. And if they didn't, then they wouldn't even be eligible for compensation. Yeah, so that has been a great source of frustration and skepticism or cynicism from the farmers that we were talking to in Slovakia. Yeah.
Just a word. Yeah, basically, kind of encountered the same experiences from farmers when I was collecting data in Abruzzo. So some of them basically, since now the conditions are quite strict, don't bother anymore to go through the entire process. So they rather just lose a few animals rather than get the incentive to join the incentive program. And so I guess that we are getting to the point where we need to find, co-create. This is the point, a process where they can get to those incentives without, not caring anymore. If this is what Andrea meant with too strict, but I guess that's the case in terms of the conditions to access the incentives.
Please, Mihai.
I would say that in Romania the problems are more complicated in terms of some shepherds that didn't know that there is a compensation system available. There is no clear subsidies for coexistence. Subsidies often goes to the landowners and not to the shepherds. And there is a complex mixture of political, social, kind of a financial kind of a topic. It's not just who gets the money. For sure, I would say like it's just it's not a fact. It's just something that I heard from them. Shepherds are not expecting anything from the government in Romania, or at least those which I'm speaking with. And they say, we are doing our job here. We are surviving in the mountains. Those that have connection, maybe they get some money from subsidies, but for us, it's more important to survive. And we are not focusing in asking money. We are focusing on keeping our way of living. So I would say this would be the general message from the mountain shepherds from Romania. So I guess this is really a topic to analyze and deep more on this administrative and these differences between regions. And within Romania, there are differences from area to area.
Okay, we've been warned that recording will stop in 2 minutes. We have, again, one question from Andrea asking how to address at a European level the fact that smaller farms don't know how to, cannot understand or have the capacity to maintain and check the preventive measure. Is there any suggestion that we can have? Luisa is smiling. Okay, I don't know. This can leave us, this amazing question is something that we all have ideas and can try and answer within this project. Thank you, Andrea. Thank everyone for participating, for talking, for sharing your opinion, your experiences. And regarding this series of webinar, there's going to be another one soon, the third one of this series. So again, keep posted, and I guess recording is done. Thank everyone. It was a pleasure. And again, thank you and talk to you soon. You saw the email for the project. If anyone has any question, any ideas, anything he wants to share, please use that. And talk to you soon.
Thanks, Virginia, for sharing. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.